Still not a triangle. Greetings, strangers. My name is Fur, and welcome to the Year of Zelda, a challenge where I must complete this list of Zelda games, otherwise I'll die in a house fire. Okay, maybe not from a house fire, or fire period for that matter, but it'll be from some way if I don't complete these games. So to get the ball rolling, let's start with the first two Zelda games on the list, The Legend of Zelda and its sequel Zelda 2 on the NES. I knew I was forgetting to do something. All jokes aside, when it comes to the Zelda duology on the NES, completing them isn't the worst thing in the world. Hell, I wouldn't even say these games are the hardest to complete in this challenge. Since when it comes to Zelda 1, I've played it a good amount of times to the point where I should be fine completing it. Though Zelda 2 is the more problematic game of the two, since I've played it once or twice before, and never recalled actually beating it. But then I realized something big regarding these games. That being how modern re-releases of these games added stuff like save states and rewind to make these games easier for newcomers. Which left me wondering how I would play these games without making it a total cakewalk, thus ruining the whole challenge before it even starts. Well, after some deep contemplation over OBS deciding not to work with my GPU that day, the best answer I came up with was making a rule to myself to not use any save states during this challenge, leaving me completely at the mercy of whatever game mechanics come my way, while the rewind feature can only be used for either cheating RNG or erasing my more embarrassing moments, with one exception I'll get to later on. But enough talking your ear off regarding my headspace before doing these two games, let's talk about the main event, starting with when it comes to completing The Legend of Zelda, I must do the following. Clear every dungeon, which includes getting its respective item, map, and compass, increase my health bar to its max capacity, show a blue letter to an old lady to get her medicine, I swear it's not as bad as it sounds, increase my bomb limit to its max capacity, obtain every item along with its permanent upgrade, so if I say buy a mirror shield, then lose it to a like, then I don't need to buy another one since it wasn't permanent. Plus, in the grand scheme of things, it really wasn't all that useful. And finally, defeat the Prince of Darkness himself, Ganon. With those criterias in mind, I started up the game and immediately got greeted with a save file calling me a bitch. I can tell already this adventure is off to a good start. But one extermination later, I booted up the game, got my wooden sword from a nice old man in a cave, and proceeded to get lost while looking for the first dungeon. Did I forget to mention that my last playthrough of this game was sometime before 2020? But skill issue aside, I found the first dungeon with only a sliver of heart remaining. Once there, I was quickly able to nab the map, compass, and bow with no problem. Heck, the first dungeon in general I was able to get through with no issues whatsoever. Where the hell is the audio? Since my joke got ruined thanks to VLC Media Player, I'll just say that the first dungeon gave me more trouble than I thought since I was admittedly being quite careless. But once I wised up, I was then able to beat the first dungeon's boss and get the first of many Triforce pieces. Then afterwards, I began my journey of completing this game via upgrading my health and getting items that will help me on my travels thanks to this overworld map with all secrets listed on it. Since Zelda games are an open book test after all, it was also during this time where I learned just how powerful your sword beam is, since it is able to attack enemies from afar whenever you're at full health. And I don't need to explain how useful an ability like that is in this game, given your standard attack might as well just be you handing out posters for your funeral. But after increasing my health to a good amount for something important later on, I entered the second dungeon and got my weak ass handed to me a good amount of times because being blue apparently makes you stronger. Truly an inspirational message to follow.
I got a blueberry for a daughter!
Shame that the boss never learned that since I beat him on my first try. Also, something about getting the map and compass easily. There's really nothing to say about this part, so just assume for every dungeon I bring up, I got the compass and map in them unless I state otherwise. But with 2 pieces obtained, my bow gets a friend that makes him not useless, my shield becomes bigger, and my sword becomes a real sword instead of firewood. My journey to complete this game was making strong progress. Minus the doctor's note, it's not that important, I swear, guys. With all that in mind, I headed to the third dungeon, which is shaped like Elon's wet dream of all things, to show Ganon's minions who's boss, and learned it's the Dark Nuts. But hey, at least I got this cool raft, so like and subscribe! What the hell am I doing? One bombing later, and I got myself the third piece rather easily. After that, I got on my raft and headed for the fourth dungeon.
Why are you blue?
Rings. Anyways, inside, I found myself a stepladder for crossing over squares of water, fought the dungeon 1 boss again, but he's facing down and has 2 heads, and managed to reach the halfway point at 1 hour and 39 minutes, which was more quicker than I expected. Seeing how much progress was made in the short amount of time, I decided to take a quick break, take care of a few things, then come back with a more refreshed mind where I got 12 hearts, which are required for the magic sword that kills enemies even easier now, along with my happy medicine for the next game. But enough foreshadowing, let's get to the 5th dungeon where I was able to get my first bomb capacity upgrade along with a flute that turns the boss into an absolute joke. But it's okay, the shit ton of dark nuts who followed their friends from Dungeon 2's advice made up for their leader's incompetence. With the 5th Triforce piece in hand, I headed for the next number after 5. 7, where I saw that apparently bosses can get demoted, as Digdonger and Dodongos can confirm. Then I got blocked by a hungry Goria, despite the large amount of space in the room. But at least my bomb capacity is at its max amount, so that's one less thing to worry about in the long run. Hence, one money run later, I fed the greedy roadblock, downgraded the candle from blue to red, then murdered the real Dungeon 1 boss where he stood. Which, if I can drop the narration for a quick second, I really like how this game makes you feel like you're becoming a true hero over the course of your adventure, starting you with nothing but green clothing and a toy sword before turning you into a seasoned veteran with several tools up your arsenal and being able to take down bosses in seconds, which is best demonstrated in Dungeon 8, which has several former bosses here who go down in seconds, showing how far you've come. I love it! Especially the part where I get the Bible and the Holy Key, which didn't do much in the grand scheme of this dungeon, but hey, I got the 7th piece anyways, which leaves only 1 dungeon left. The 6th dungeon, and honestly, this is hands down the hardest dungeon in this game for one particular reason. These fucking Wizrobes. They single-handedly killed me more times than any bosses combined in this game. Since you can't tell where they're going most of the time, they have a ridiculously strong ranged attack which butchers through your health bar, and the fact that this dungeon just spawns several of them lead to moments where you just get wombo comboed to death by these bastards. TLDR, Wizrobes can eat my whiz, and I finally got every Triforce piece, which means it's time to make some preparations, all thanks to my sponsors, fast travel, RNG cheating, and potions. Oh yeah, and did I forget to mention this video was sponsored by Hunt? Once that was wrapped up, I headed into the final dungeon, which was conveniently shaped like a skull. I wonder why. Where I encountered several obstacles like Patras, these fucking Wizrobes that I hate, and bubbles that left me vulnerable to the Wizrobes. But through it all, I got the map, I got the compass, I got the red tunic, which makes me stronger than ever, despite the fact that blue is clearly the superior upgrade here. And most importantly, I got the silver arrows, where once I reached Ganon and the game turned into Where on Earth is Ganon San Diego, I turned him into burnt bacon and saved Zelda, thus completing all of Zelda 1 to 100% in 4 hours and 28 minutes, all in one day. And at the end of it all, I gotta say, it's quite surprising to see how well this game holds up, since despite the difficult moments, the game was quite lenient towards the players, such as the continue system spawning you at the start of the dungeon if you die there, or the overworld being a where exploring it doesn't take an eternity, along with a decent fast travel system in place. And honestly, if most of these games are going to be like this, then I think this challenge will be beaten long before the year ends. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We still have 18 more games left in this challenge, so let's move on to the next game on the list. Around the start of this video, I called Zelda 2 the more problematic game of the two, and that is for a list of reasons, most of them you'll see as I tell you my journey into insanity, but one of the more noticeable ones is the fact that out of every Zelda game in this challenge, Zelda 2 has the most unique gameplay style, that being of a 2D side-scroller with an RPG leveling system. And for this challenge, I need to increase my stats to the max, collect all heart and magic upgrades, clear all all of the palaces, get every spell in the game, collect the 6 Link dolls scattered throughout the game, learn the 2 sword techniques, and finally get the Triforce of Courage to wake up Zelda, who isn't this Zelda, but another Zelda who happened to exist before the Zelda from the last game, and because of her great coma, every princess must be named Zelda, which must be hellish for royal family reunions. Prince, you're an asshole! Wait, you wrote all that?! And then the game started. The moment I booted up the game... Is this going to be a running pattern, or is Nintendo Switch Online trying to tell me something? One same verse later, I immediately start in Zelda's tomb with a sword and shield already in hand, and once I sighed... Wait, I sighed? Is that even a word? And once outside, I immediately head to this forest standing... in the middle of nowhere! To get this back, where I quickly get a level up, and right away the first issue arises. The level ups are sequential, where once you get one, you can either choose to level up right away, or save it for the next stat in line. Which on paper doesn't sound like a bad idea, but whoever was in charge of ordering these stats really liked health, since within 3 level ups, health gets chosen twice with magic getting the short stick of 1, and attack is somewhere under the bottom of the sea, which leads to some seriously unbalanced stats, and that wouldn't be a problem if all 3 stats weren't important to your survival. Since life increases your defense, attack increases the amount of damage you do to your enemies, aka offense, and magic lowers the cost of spells, thus allowing for more spells to be used. Oh shit, I never talked about spells. Well, let's go to the first town. Oh god, I never mentioned towns either. We're only at the start of the game and already this script is falling apart! Rock with a smiley face on it, save us from this structural nightmare!
In Zelda 2, it has an overworld that you traverse when you're not in a palace. In said overworld there are towns, and in each town there's an old man who will teach you a spell after completing a certain requirement. Though in certain towns there are 2 swordsmen, one in each town, who will teach you sword techniques, which makes fighting enemies a lot more manageable. But back to spells, they are what the magic meter is used for, with the higher magic count leading to lower spell costs. And these spells range from required to survive to absolutely useless.
Wow, thank you, Rock with a smiley face on it. You saved this video before it could collapse in on itself. Where would we be without you?
Dead.
And once I got my required to survive spell, I headed towards the first palace. Unlike the first game, there aren't any maps or compasses to collect, meaning I have the net positive of there being less items to collect in this game. But on the other hand, that means I'm gonna be lost as shit in these palaces. Though, just like the first game, the internet exists. And with it, I got the candle and immediately started heading to the next palace. And why is that? Well, let's get back to first list of reasons why this leveling system is a fucking mess. So the higher you increase your stats, the more experience you need for your next level up. You mean like most RPGs? Yes, but no, since at least in those games, their growth is more gradual, like a slowly increasing line. Meanwhile, with Zelda 2, its EXP growth is the equivalent of a fucking curve. Since it starts at something manageable, like being within the hundreds when the EXP enemies gives is within the single to double digits, to becoming outright ludicrous, where the game still gives you enemies that drop EXP in the double digits, but requiring that you get around 2,000 experience just to level up your attack, as an example of how unfair this leveling system is. Which, when you take my previous rant into mind, you get a cycle of go to a new place, get bodied by the enemies there, game over, backtrack, rinse and repeat until you get lucky.
Did I forget to mention the fact that if you get a game over, the game will remove all of your experience? So if you die while being close to a level up, say goodbye to that level up, cause it's long gone once you select save or continue.
So because of this broken ass system, I needed to think of a plan, and while watching other Zelda content creators, I came across one who gave me just that.
Luckily though, there is a way to cheese this experience system to get max levels somewhat easily. After beating a palace and placing the crystal in the statue, you will automatically be gifted enough experience points to level up an attribute. So after clearing most of the palace and getting the dungeon item, you could not place the crystal, come back later on in the game and place the crystal once you're at a point where killing enemies the normal way will take ages to level yourself up.
With the groundwork settled, I got the goddess, I mean trophy, because God was dead around that time. With it, I got the jump spell and headed to the next part of the overworld, and I would get well adjusted to it because I had to go through it a lot. Minus Bagu's house because I needed to be there one time. And that's because of Death Mountain. Mountain. This maze-like area contains some of the hardest enemies so far in the game, who decimate your health thanks to this broken leveling system, and with each game over, I would have to go back through that cave, encounter God knows how many enemies, and just die in the same area over and over again. Not even getting a healing spell could make this part any easier. Hell, it got so bad that I took a break from Death Mountain and just went to the second palace for gloves that let me break blocks. All of this bullshit just for a hammer. In most situations, I would immediately throw my Switch into the trash, especially now since Switch 2 is on the way with Seth Rogen DK to show me the interview. But this is actually incredibly useful, as I no longer need to go through that cave again or Death Mountain. So thank you, Hammer, for freeing me from the first circle of hell. The second circle will have an all-you-can-eat buffet and demonetized content. But I'm not monetized, bitch. So with that massive hurdle out of the way, I was able to make it to the third town where, after giving a woman some magic water, I received the fairy spell alongside the downward thrust, which, if I could speak positively about this game for once, I love this move. It's not only just a great attack move in its own right, dealing damage to enemies when you land on them akin to a Mario game, but it also allows for some great speed tech where you can just bounce on an enemy with a downward thrust and just keep moving on with your day. In this sea of coal, it's nice to find some diamonds in the rough. Oh hey, the third palace. Let's see what's in this place. Sweet, a raft! Just like the first game, except it's only used once. I'm not joking. Zelda 2 is a great video game that is well designed and not the black sheep of the franchise. Once on the other side of the world, I headed to Naburu Town where, upon giving a woman some fountain water, I guess she's busy also throwing her voice out for this video, I got the fire spell, which is only useful for defeating certain enemies that you could just ignore with a simple downward thrust. What a great spell. Hopefully the next town gives me a better spell. Oh yeah, I should do that. Well, let's head to Maze Island and rescue some kid along with whatever bonuses are hidden on this island. And while we're at it, let's get the item in the fourth palace to cut back on the backtracking. Yo, some nice red boots. Now it's time for me to die. But the special thing about these boots is they allow me to walk on water just like Jesus. That's another criteria off the list. Now I just need a crucifixion and Zack Snyder will be all over this franchise. Also a heart piece. Anyways, I headed back to the town for the spell there, Reflect, which will be important for a certain boss later on. But enough about that, let's get a flute and die afterwards. The one look at my current stats and I realized that I really need to work on my levels. So I grinded in the 5th palace until all of my stats are level 6. Which I did off screen, since any chance to save space on my computer, the better. So the next day I got back into the game and headed to the 6th palace. Along the way I got pelted by rocks, found a hidden village where I got my magic meter fully maxed out, a spell called Spell which got me the magic key that renders every key useless from now on, alongside the final heart container maxing out my health bar. From there I decided that now was the time to sweep through these palaces. Throughout this process I saw something I didn't see much of playing the game. I was actually having fun. Yeah, I'm stunned too given how this segment has been so far. But once you remove the BS leveling system, the game's frustrating difficulty, your moveset being stiff until you get the downward thrust, the consistent backtracking every time you get a game over, those stupid pits which kill you if you even look at them thanks to Link's knockback, and God knows what else I bitched about so far, there's actually a decent game here since the enemy design requires that you stay on your toes and find an opening to get damage in. That I actually like since it gives the combat some depth, which for a game on the NES is quite impressive. Not to mention the exploration while in both the overworld and palaces is quite fun since you never know what you're gonna get, which helps tie into the experience of this being a grand adventure. It's just a shame that these aspects get overshadowed by this game's several flaws. Also, remember that reflect spell that I mentioned earlier? Well, here's the main use for it. Defeating a singular boss by crouching in the corner. This game, man, it just does whatever it wants with no rhyme or reason. With the 5 palaces completed, I headed to the 6th palace where I got the cross, which not only lets me see the dead, but also makes Zack Snyder want to know your location. Start running. I fought the boss over several lava pits, guess what happened there? But yeah, all palaces are completed and my stats are now maxed out. So let's complete the spell list by getting the final spell of the game, Thunder. Those lost children won't see it coming. Now with the final spell at hand, I decide to get that Triforce of Courage. Especially when throughout this final stretch, I've been making sure to collect every Link doll to ensure that I survive as long as possible. Due to them being 1-ups which when collected never spawn again, making me wonder why I even have them in the first place. But God bless them, since heading to the Great Palace isn't a test of skill, it's a test of patience. As this is where the game goes full in on being a bastard to the player. With several lava pits, lizards who no matter what I do are just immune to my attacks, ghosts who have consistently managed to knock me into the lava because NES games are bullshit, and the fact that despite the long-ass journey, the game can just spawn a random encounter on top of you which just decimates through your lives. It's a goddamn mess! Especially when the best way to get through this long trek was becoming a fairy and damaging myself through the whole thing. Since I didn't need the level ups, I just wanted to wake a girl up. What did I do to you guys?
Nice hat.
Oh boy, smooching time!
Okay, point taken. However, despite everything blocking my journey, I finally reached it. The Great Palace. Words cannot express how happy I was to finally reach here, since this is the only place where if you die there, you will spawn immediately at the entrance. So once getting game over there, since these birds are cold-blooded hunters apparently, I made the worst mistake in this entire run and selected save instead of continue. Since I thought if I saved while at the Great Palace, I would start at the Great Palace. So imagine the despair I felt when I appeared in front of a comatose Zelda. Meaning I would have to do it all again. The backtracking, the rocks, the stupid ghosts that knock me into lava, the lizards that are impossible to kill. I would have to do it all again. Zelda 2 is a great video game that is well designed and not the black sheep of the franchise. But despite everything, I made it back to the Great Palace. Did things get better from there? No, they most certainly did not. Since the Great Palace is without a doubt the biggest example of everything wrong with this game. From the size of this palace becoming so large that it becomes a nightmare to traverse without a map, the enemies being at their all-time worst, such as these bird knights who, no matter how far I go, will make it their job to personally kill me, alongside having the immunity of a god since no matter what attack I use, they took no damage while eating away at my health with a shield spell equipped and my life being at max. The single Link doll that made me have to go out of my way in this maze just to get, and worst of all, the Thunderbird and Dark Link at the end of it all. As soon as I reached the giant lost child, I cast Thunder Spell on it and immediately got my ass handed to me on several occasions, because his hitbox is incredibly small, which makes for a lovely time fighting him as he flies around the area while crying a shit ton of fireballs. Is this where the Soul games got its difficulty from, as this feels like something I would find in their kind of games? And when I saw that game over screen because of that stupid bird, my patience reached its limit. That's when I decided to use the rewind feature to beat this boss in Dark Link, since I was fed up with this game and its fuck the player mentality. And if you're disappointed by me using rewind to cheat the game like this, then don't worry, I'll probably have to play these games again off screen because VLC Media Player told me to go fuck myself. With the Thunderbird destroyed and my life being a single hit away from death while my magic is just dead, I finally faced Dark Link, where I just went into the corner and cheesed him until this shit happened. Because Zelda 2... Why is nothing working around here? In spite of it all though, I finally beat Dark Link and woke Zelda up, thus completing this game to 100%, which took 6 hours and 22 minutes over the span of 3 days. Because patience was strongly needed if you couldn't tell. Hey guys, Fur here, recording this last update while watching Gladiator off to the side. God help me come February when I watch most of the Oscar nominations. But to get to why I'm recording this, I just finished replaying Zelda 2 for more proper footage thanks to VLC Media Player being, well, you already know. And while most of my thoughts on this game are the same, I feel like I got really jaded around the end from having to do the trek to the Great Palace again because of my own actions. Especially when doing the Great Palace again, the bosses were nowhere near as bad as I made them out to be. Minus Darklink, he's still a joke. So instead of letting my original thoughts on Zelda 2 play, I'll just tell you my updated thoughts. While I appreciate this game for trying something new with the franchise, my experience was really bogged down by the artificial difficulty the game throws at you from bottomless pits, Death Mountain, and much of the second half of the game. So if I do pick this game up again, it won't be the original since there are some talented ROMs that fix on the issues I brought up in this game, or at the very least make things more fair for the player. Anyways, let's get back to what my video self has to say. Though now with only 17 games left, that gives me enough time to make this snake into a triangle. So see you next time for another installment of Year of Zelda.